just saw this term called the forever layoff, and this has been one of my biggest fears as I just try to think about what an economy looks like post AI, AGI, ASI, all this stuff. And a forever layoff sounds terrifying. Let's see what it means.
According to Glassdoor, the forever layoff is becoming more and more common in this economy as job insecurity is now higher than it was in March 2020 at the start of the pandemic. Here to explain is Chief Economist at Glassdoor, Daniel Zhao. So the forever layoff, Daniel, what does that mean?
What we're seeing is that companies are turning to smaller layoffs in the last few years, but the total number of people that are being laid off is going up. And so what we think is going on here is that companies are trickling out these smaller layoffs to try to avoid the bad press that comes with one large layoff. And
let's pause right there and let's address what's actually happening, which is companies are doing small layoffs back to back to back so that they don't have to follow the WARN Act. As you can see here from the Department of Labor.gov, this is the WARN Act. So you're protected by the WARN Act if a plant closing happens, and that's at least 50 full-time workers. But if it's under 50 full-time workers that you're laying off at one time, you don't have to give them notice or pay them severance. A mass layoff, where your employer lays off between 50 and 499 full-time workers. So just lay off 49 workers every other week. Or a situation where your employer lays off 500 or more full-time workers at a single site of employment. So what's been happening, at least in the news, is that these companies announce these huge layoffs and then their stock tanks, bad press, videos get leaked of all the layoffs, and it's just not good. So what they've discovered is they could just skip the WARN Act by firing a few people, and that just flies under the radar. 16 people disappear from your company one week and 20 another week. People know what's happening, but it's not announced anywhere. It's just
I guess that makes sense. That's not what I thought it meant. I thought it meant you're not going to ever get that job again. And that I see happening. I see more and more people that have got laid off, and it's been years they haven't been able to get the job again. And I think that has to do with a few different things, but AI is one of them. I think what ended up happening is during COVID, companies overhired to get as much money in at that time because we all were flushed with cash that the government gave us, and they wanted you to give that money to them. Unfortunately, not enough people bought assets at that time instead of giving money to the richest people in the world, making them richer. This time it's going to happen again. They're about to have to give people money, and you need to understand that this is how it works. The government gives people money. People give companies money. That money goes into the owners of the company, and that company owner buys assets. You can skip the line and buy assets before the company owner buys assets, and you will benefit from all of this as well. But I hope you can get another job. That's where I want to see where this goes.
companies forcing RTO on employees when they previously told them you're free to work remote. It's on purpose. It's like constructive dismissal, making your job so annoying to the point where you just quit. And then they don't have to pay you unemployment or severance. And that's exactly what's happening with the forever layoffs. But it doesn't really matter whether your company announces a mass layoff or your company doesn't. There's chances for you to be fired. You don't own the company. This isn't a new thing. At my very first job, they said, no, you're secure here. Then they fire someone else. No, you're good though, Josh. And then they fire someone else. You're good though, Josh. And they fire someone else, and then my turn. Bye, Josh. It only took one time for me to realize that companies don't care about you. And if you don't own the company, there's nothing you can do. Honestly, this is the default state of jobs, and people are just waking up to it. The forever layoffs are not new. But let's jump back to the video.
In some ways worse for workers because you can have this anxiety hanging over you about whether a layoff is going to come in the next few months, and that makes it hard for workers to stay engaged, hard for workers to stay focused. And of course, as business leaders really push for efficiency and productivity, that seems to run counter to this strategy that some companies are using.
I mean, it seems like it creates anxiety, insecurity, and resentment. What can people do who feel like they're having these emotions around the holidays with this possible layoff coming around the corner?
Well, unfortunately, there are some things that are outside of our control, right? And so I think it's important.
What a way to say if you don't own the company, there's nothing you can do.
I mean, unfortunately, he's being a little bit I guess the way he's saying it is not great, but it's true. It sucks. Like, as a business owner, I've had to do layoffs many times. I understand, like, we're trying to keep the business alive, and if our costs are more than how much we make, we have to lower amount of employees because employees are the most expensive thing in companies. So it makes sense. But again, I've never run a Fortune 500 company where it's billions of dollars. So I don't know the difference internally, but I have worked at companies that have been laid off. So, and as an entrepreneur, I understand it more now. But when I was at work or employee, I didn't fully. Um, I didn't understand many things back then. But the overall is true. I think going forward, and I've been saying this for years. I've had multiple shows about this entrepreneur hour, entrepreneur and investor hour, because I think in this new world we're heading into, you have to think about being an entrepreneur. You can no longer just say, "Yeah, my job is safe." What job is safe? Even my job as a business owner is not safe. What I created, AI is better than me at everything. So it might be able to create a better version of what I created. Stack was created to help people in these times because in 2021, when I saw all this stuff happening, I said, I need to build a business that works even in an environment like COVID. So I started just planning and thinking, and then I said, okay, what type of business would work in that environment? It's a business that can do business all around the world online. And then I said, okay, so what type of thing would you sell though? An investment is a thing that most people need to be doing. So I said, all right, I want to learn more about it. I want to grow my investments. Let me make a business around investment. And that is Stack. If you want to learn more, there's a link in the bio. I mean, in the description.
Fortunately, some things are out of our control, and it's important for us to understand that. This has always been the reality. There is no job security. It's a lie. It's always been a lie. They just say that so you keep working there until they don't need you anymore. If you look at the ABC News banner here, forever layoff, rolling cuts of fewer than 50 employees at a time. And then we go over to the WARN Act, and you can see a mass layoff is considered 50 workers or more. So companies are just skipping the WARN Act.
So, but this is where I've been running my business for almost 3 years, and I've seen bear market in the investment, but also people getting jobs, losing jobs, getting jobs again. And what I see is the truth is while you have income, you need to be investing because what ends up happening is most people, once they lose their job, they look up and they don't have savings, they don't have money to last them long. But if you were investing while you had income, you would have something to live off of, sell to pay bills. I don't think it's not just savings because savings are not gonna do that. Like if you saved, yes, you can have a certain amount of savings, but if you put that savings or a percentage of it into investments, those investments grow. Bitcoin and Ethereum have been growing 30 to 50% a year on average for years. That can double your money pretty quickly. And now you have more time to find a job and not stress. And this is what I definitely see being one of the hugest problems with non-rich customers. I have rich customers, I have non-rich customers. The non-rich customers, regular people working 9 to 5, retired, they didn't invest enough when they had income. And if you're not going to be a business owner, you better be an asset owner.
With the forever layoff, classic corporations playing in the gray area in any way they can to save money or avoid paying employees.
And what can people do who feel like they're having these emotions around the holidays with this possible layoff coming around the corner?
Well, unfortunately, there are some things that are outside of our control, right? And so I think it's important for workers to really recognize what's in your control, what can you manage, and there are some things that you can get started on if you feel like a layoff is potentially coming down the pipe at your company. So that might mean brushing up on your resume, reaching out and reactivating some of those connections in your network.
This is silly. You shouldn't wait for the fear of a layoff to be reaching out to people and sending out applications. You should always just have things going out while you're at your job, even if you like your job, because of things like this. How many times do I have to say this? Unless you made the job and you control the job, there's no security.
Yeah, I remember years ago when I had jobs and I would hear, okay, a lot of people are starting to get laid off. That means matter of time happens to me. I was in the advertising field though, so we kind of got hit by layoffs early and then we got back into jobs early because one of the first places companies stop putting money is advertising. But they need advertising to rev up, sales. So in the beginning, they pull the money from the advertising agencies and companies that deal with that world feel it. Then when they're coming back, they're like, okay, let's turn back on the advertising engine. So and again, if you're good at finding jobs, any environment, you still can do it. But the difference now is I've seen people who lost their jobs years now, and they haven't been able to find a job like that again. So that makes me think this time is a little different because of AI. And now you may not need 5 developers or 5 HR reps or 5 sales development reps. You might only need 2, 1. So now those 4 or 3 people, what are they going to do? They have to create whole new careers, reskill. Hopefully you're of an age where you don't get age discriminated, which I've seen. That's the scary part of this time.
Old alumni or old friends, family that you maybe haven't kept as much in touch with from a career perspective. And so these are all things that people can start to prepare for if they think that a layoff might be coming down the pipe.
What disconnect are you seeing between employees and leadership in corporate America?
Well, I think this forever layoff is symptomatic of this broader disconnect that we're seeing between employees and leaders. And in fact, in Glassdoor data, when we look at reviews about senior management and senior leaders, we see a huge increase in terms like disconnect, distrust, misalignment, miscommunication. So there is this growing disconnect between leaders and employees. And I think in particular, over the last few years, as power has shifted in the job market from employees back towards businesses, there really has been this feeling from workers like the job market isn't working for them, that they're under more pressure than they have been in quite a while. And that's why you're seeing this feeling that workers can't trust their leaders.
Surely he's smart enough to notice the correlation between under 50 employees and the WARN Act's 50 employee requirement. No? We're not going to mention that anywhere at all, that companies are just blatantly skipping the WARN Act. Nah, why would we do that? Instead, let's just give employees some useless advice. The comments on this video are absolutely bootlicker though. To be fair, as if the American worker is loyal or cares about their company. What's fair is fair. It'd be one thing if American workers were appreciative and loyal. Do you see why they're not appreciative and loyal though? It doesn't matter what company they go to. This seems to keep happening, doesn't it? Unless you own the company, unless you make your own job, you're not in control of it. And so anything anyone else says to you, regardless of if you trust them or if they're at the top, it doesn't mean anything. This is people's livelihoods here. And people will lie to other people to maintain their own livelihood. Why can't people get a janitor job until things pick up? Beggars can't be choosers. That sounds like someone who hasn't had a job in like 20 years. You don't.
I think another thing, I've seen that a lot. Like, people are lazy. I think having income is not guaranteed to everybody. Even if, again, I don't think the society's not meant for everybody to win. Unfortunately, that's the truth. There's not 8 billion jobs. If there's 8 billion people, there's not 8 billion jobs. And yes, there's a lot of children, but there's not a job for every human being. So some people are just not going to be able to get jobs. They're going to be less skilled people. So those people also not going to be able to get jobs. Yes, there's janitor jobs, but there's not unlimited janitor jobs. It's not unlimited opportunity. And it's going to get worse. I think these ideas need to change. People need to understand we're heading into a time where income is not guaranteed. It never was, but now it's more likely that you won't have income than you will if all this happens.